Welcome to AudioCert, where the official study guides are brought to life. Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm really glad you're joining us today because, honestly, we're about to dive into something that's, well, it's right at the heart of digital investigations. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're going deep into how we acquire, duplicate, and recover data, especially those tricky deleted files and partitions. We're talking about the real mechanics, the nuts and bolts of digital evidence that a computer hacking forensic investigator, a CHFI, absolutely needs to get their head around. And this deep dive is, of course, part of our look at the EC Council CHFI 312-49 certification, which, as you know, is, well, it's a pretty vital qualification for anyone involved in securing or investigating digital stuff. This isn't just about the tech side, is it? It's really understanding the evidence itself.
Yeah, exactly. And what's truly fascinating here, is that before you can even think about doing any real analysis, any analysis that holds up legally, you have to secure the data meticulously. So this chapter, it isn't just a list of tools. It's really about getting the nature of digital evidence, how incredibly fragile it is, and how easily it can be, well, compromised or contaminated, or even destroyed if you don't handle it exactly right, with real precision. So our mission today is basically to give you that foundational knowledge, how to safely and forensically preserve that evidence, make sure it's solid, admissible if it ever needs to be. It's the very first step, the most critical one, really.
That's a huge point, that integrity piece. And by the end of this deep dive, you listening are going to have a much clearer picture of how dilution actually works, and the really critical difference between something being just deleted versus truly destroyed. That's a big one. We'll look at some essential tools for recovery and acquisition, not just what they are, but why certain ones are better in certain situations. And crucially, we'll really nail down that difference between, just getting a file back for a user versus the strict, forensically sound methods you need for an investigation. Get ready for some aha moments, I think, because we're going to pull back the curtain on how data that seems totally gone can often still be found and used about.
The fundamental challenge. Understanding deletion versus destruction. Okay, so let's start with something most people probably get wrong. I know I did before I learned this stuff. We tend to think hitting delete just makes a file, poof, vanish. It feels so final, doesn't it? But in forensics, well, that's almost never what actually happens. So technically speaking, what is going on when we delete something? What's the computer doing?
Yeah, that's a really important question to start with. When you delete a file, you're almost never actually erasing the data from the physical disk itself. Not right away, anyway. Imagine your hard drive is like this huge library, a massive library. But it has a kind of peculiar way of managing its books. When you delete a book, you're usually just, say, taking its card out of the old card catalog. Remember those? Or maybe you're just marking its shelf space as available for a new book to go there eventually. The book itself, the physical thing, it's still sitting there on the shelf. It stays there until a totally new book comes along and needs that exact spot. See, on a hard disk, files are stored in these little chunks called clusters. They're the smallest bits of space the OS can deal with. And the information about which clusters belong to which file, that's kept in special tables, like the file allocation table, or FAT on older systems, or the master file table, the MFT, on newer NTFS volumes. So deleting a file, it just removes its record from those tables, and it marks the clusters the file was using as free for new data. The original data, our book, it's still physically there until something else overwrites it. That specific spot, it's a key difference. The data exists, but the map the OS uses to find it, that's gone.
That library analogy makes it incredibly clear. So it's a bit like deleting an employee record from a company database doesn't make the person's actual desk vanish from the office, right? It just means the system now thinks that desk space is free. It can be assigned to someone else. So deleting a file doesn't instantly vaporize the bits on the hard drive platter. It's all about how the OS manages its records, its bookkeeping, not an immediate physical scrub. It's almost like our computers are, terrible hoarders. They never actually throw anything out until they absolutely have to.
Precisely. And this idea, it goes beyond just single files. Think about when an entire partition gets deleted. What happens then is the entry for that whole partition in the partition table, which is in a really important spot called the master boot record, or MBR, that entry gets removed. This makes all the data on that partition totally inaccessible to the operating system. It's like that whole section of the library suddenly isn't listed in the master directory anymore. But again, the raw data, it's still physically sitting there on the hard disk platters. The structure, the way to access it easily, that's gone. But the raw material, the potential evidence, it hangs around until it gets overwritten. And that's why a CHFI's job is so vital. We're kind of like digital archaeologists, piecing together those lost maps. 2, diverse paths to deletion. and opportunities for recovery.
Okay, that's a really critical foundation to understand. So it sounds like there isn't just one way to delete something. There are many ways, and each method might have different implications for recovery, how easy it is, or even if it's possible. This is where the details really start to matter for an investigator, right? Let's look at some common ways files get deleted. A, command line deletion, the harder delete for users.
Indeed. One of the most direct ways, and maybe a bit intimidating for some users, is deleting through the command line. Commands like del and erase in Windows, they've been around since the DOS days. They're powerful because they completely bypass the recycle bin. There's no safety net there. When you type something like DLC, myfile.txt, or use a wildcard like erase.tot, or the pointer to that file, it's immediately removed from the FAT or the MFT. Gone. The OS instantly sees those clusters as free. But crucially, the data itself is still physically there. It's ready to be recovered with the right tools, provided it hasn't been overwritten by new data yet. And, the user's intent often comes into play when they choose to use the command line. It's usually a more deliberate action.
That's interesting. So for an investigator, knowing how a file was deleted isn't just about recovery. It could hint at why, like user intent. Are there specific switches or options used with del or erase that investigators should know about? Because those little details could tell you a lot, couldn't they? About how thorough or maybe how quick someone was trying to be?
Well, absolutely. The switches, they add a lot of nuance. They can give you a glimpse into what the user was thinking. For instance, P. That prompts for confirmation before deleting each file. It's a safety feature. If someone used that, maybe they were being careful or hesitant. Then there's F. That forces deletion of read-only files. Using that might show determination, getting rid of something even if it's protected. S deletes files from the current directory and all subdirectories. That's a wide sweep. Maybe an attempt to remove a whole group of related files. That Q is quiet mode. No prompt for confirmation, just quick silent deletion. That could suggest speed or maybe trying to be stealthy. And then A lets you delete based on file attributes, like R for read-only, H for hidden, A for system. You can even use a minus sign, like AR, to delete everything except read-only files. Understanding these switches helps you figure out exactly how a file was deleted via command line, what state the data might be in, and potentially the user's level of intent or awareness. Were they being cautious or trying to be sneaky.b? Moving files, a hidden delete.
Okay, what about moving files? We do that all the time. It feels pretty harmless, just relocating stuff. But is moving a file from a forensic angle sometimes a form of deletion? Could it leave a trace we should know about?
It definitely can be, yes. But it really depends on where you're moving it from and to. If you move a file, say, from one folder to another within the same partition, the same drive letter, like C, then mostly it's just an update to the file system's tables. The pointer changes location, but the actual data blocks, they don't physically move on the disk. It's just a quick, logical change, like changing a book's shelf number but keeping it in the same library range. However, if you move a file from one partition to another partition, say from C to D, or to a completely different hard drive or even a USB stick, then it's actually a two-step process, and this is where the deletion happens. First, the file is copied to the new destination. Then the original file is deleted from the source location. And this difference is super important for a CHFI, because forensically, it means you might actually have two places to look for that data. You could potentially recover it from the original spot where it was deleted, and you might also find it in the new location where it was copied. This is especially true if that deletion from the original spot wasn't immediately overwritten.
It gives you a kind of backup, a second chance an investigator can use. C disk, cleanup utilities, automated spring cleaning.
Right, okay. Now, Windows and other OCs have these built-in tools like disk cleanup. They're meant to help us free up space. They seem pretty harmless, like you said, automated spring cleaning. How do these utilities affect data recovery? What should an investigator be aware of?
Yeah, disk cleanup. Its main job is to free up disk space by getting rid of files the OS thinks are, well, safe to delete. Stuff it thinks isn't needed anymore. This usually includes things like temporary setup files, downloaded program files like ActiveX controls, Java applets, that sort of thing. Also temporary internet files, old CHK, DSK files. Those are file fragments saved during disk checks, and of course the contents of the recycle bin itself, and just general temp files that haven't been touched in a while. It might also offer to compress old files or remove index catalog files. But just like using del at the command line, these utilities mostly just remove the file's entry from the FAT or the MFT. They mark the clusters as free. So unless those clusters get overwritten pretty quickly by new data, the original data, it can still often be recovered using the right tools. So from the OS's point of view, yeah, it's efficiently deleted to make space. But from a forensic point of view, definitely not destroyed. It's important for a CHFI to remember that what's convenient for the user often means opportunity for the investigator. D. the true end, permanently destroying data.
Okay, so we've established that just hitting delete doesn't really cut it. And even formatting a drive isn't a guaranteed way to get rid of data, since it mostly just rebuilds the file structure. So how do you really make sure data is gone? Utterly, totally gone. Beyond any hope of recovery, even with fancy tools, is there a point of no return?
Yes, and this is where we shift from talking about mere deletion to the concept of data destruction. That's a much stronger action. The only way to be sure data can't be recovered by software is to actually overwrite it with different data. There's software specifically designed for this, often called disk erasing or disk wiping software. What it does is systematically fill every single sector of the disk or the specific file space with patterns of ones and zeros. Often, it uses complex random patterns, and it usually does this multiple times in multiple passes. You might hear about standards like the DoD 5220.2202M standard, which specifies multiple passes. The idea is that by overwriting repeatedly, every trace of the original magnetic signal is replaced. So if someone tried to recover data afterwards, all they'd get is the overwrite pattern, not the original stuff. Now, there's some debate on exactly how many passes are truly needed for modern drives. Some say 1 or 2 random passes is enough, but the intent is clear. Obliterate the original data. Beyond software, you get into specialized hardware. A degausser, or a bulk demagnetizer, is basically a very powerful magnet. It's used to erase magnetic media, like old floppy disks or backup tapes, by scrambling the magnetic orientation of the particles that store the data. It's like a low-level format that physically messes up the magnetic patterns. You can deghost hard drives too, but it's pretty extreme. It usually renders the drive completely unusable afterwards.
Right, I can see the logic, but isn't there a risk there? Like, couldn't a degausser be too destructive? If that drive was your only piece of evidence, wouldn't degaussing wipe out any trace, including maybe proof of malicious activity? It sounds like it just nukes everything.
That is an excellent point, and a really critical ethical thing in forensics. Yes, degaussing is definitely a sledgehammer. It's for secure data disposal, not for evidence preservation. If an investigator found a drive that had been degaussed, well, they wouldn't be able to get any data off it. But the act of degaussing itself, that becomes a huge piece of evidence. It strongly suggests intent to conceal information, which is a very significant finding. It tells a story, even if the original data is gone. And then, for the really sensitive stuff, top secret information, the ultimate measure is physical destruction, no question. For floppy disks, tapes, CDs, that means industrial shredding. For hard drives, it means taking the drive apart, getting those platters out the actual disks where the data lives, and then physically destroying them, scarring them, puncturing them, melting them. You might even use acid on magnetic media. So the key takeaway here is this. Remember, if a file is just deleted, the data usually isn't gone until it's actually overwritten by another file, or by wiping software, or destroyed by extreme methods like degaussing or physical destruction. Until one of those things happens, the chance of recovery exists. And that's the CHFI's window. 3. The recycle bin, a user safety net and a forensic gold mine.
Okay, the recycle bin. That's something pretty much everyone who uses Windows or even a Mac is familiar with. It's that safety net, right? Gives us a second chance if we accidentally delete something. But for a forensic investigator, it's way more than just a convenience feature. It can be a really complex and potentially very revealing forensic gold mine, like the digital lost and found box.
Right.
Functionality and key differences, Windows versus Mac.
You're absolutely right. It's a critical area for users and investigators both. Windows Recycle Bin and the Macintosh Trash Can, they both act as temporary holding places for deleted stuff. They offer that oops buffer. But there are some really important differences between them that affect how users interact with them and what investigators might find. In Windows, when you delete a file, say from your desktop or using Windows Explorer, it goes to the recycle bin. And crucially, the system remembers its original location. This lets the recycle bin automatically restore the file right back where it came from, with its original name. Very user-friendly. You can also open the recycle bin, look through the items, restore specific ones, or permanently delete individual files if you want to free up space. The Mac Trash Can works a bit differently. You can drag things into it, you can look inside, but to restore something, you have to manually drag it back out, and you have to remember where it came from originally. And importantly, the Mac Trash Can usually only lets you empty the whole thing at once, not individual files, so it's less granular for the user. These functional differences, they matter. They help us understand user behavior, what they might expect, and where potential evidence might be hiding during an investigation. Helps the CHFI know where to look first. B, what bypasses the recycle bin, critical for investigation.
Right. Now, it's a common mistake, I think, to assume that everything you delete ends up in the recycle bin. Lots of users probably think it's a perfect catch-all, but I've heard that's definitely not always true. What kinds of deletions skip it completely? And why is this absolutely critical for an investigator to know? Sounds like a blind spot for users, maybe an opportunity for bad actors.
This is absolutely critical knowledge for investigators. If you just relied on the recycle bin, you'd miss potentially vital evidence. Here's the deal. Only files deleted from local hard drives using Windows Explorer or software that specifically uses the Windows deletion system actually go to the recycle bin. That's a pretty specific set of rules. Files deleted from network drives, like a shared folder on a server, never touch the local recycle bin. They're just marked as deleted directly on the server. Same thing for removable storage. USB flash drives, floppy disks, memory cards, delete something from those, it's gone. Bypasses the bin. Items deleted from inside compressed folders, like a .zip file, they bypass it too. And those command line tools we talked about, delail and erase, they bypass it completely. Also, if a file is simply too big for the space allocated to the recycle bin, Windows will usually warn you and then delete it permanently, rather than putting it in the bin. So what does this mean for a CHFI? It's huge. If you're investigating and looking for evidence, you absolutely cannot rely solely on the recycle bin. A lot of important data might have skipped that user-friendly safety net entirely. You have to use deeper recovery methods that scan the raw disk. The recycle bin is more about user convenience than being a complete forensic log. See configuration, storage, and forensic significance.
Okay, so the recycle bin isn't just one single folder then. It sounds like it's got specific settings, maybe even different storage locations depending on the system setup. How is it configured, and where does Windows actually store this stuff? And why are those details so important for forensic analysis? Sounds like more than just that icon on the desktop.
Yeah, you've hit on something really important there. The recycle bin is way more complex under the hood than that simple icon suggests. First off, there's actually a separate recycle bin folder for each partition on your hard disk. So if you have a C drive and a D drive, they each get their own recycle bin managed independently. You can configure them separately, setting different size limits for each drive, or you can set a global configuration for all drives. By default, historically, it used about 10% of the disk space, though in Vista and later, it's a bit more complex. 10% for drives up to 40 gigabytes, then a fixed 4 gigabyte plus 5% of the space above that. And when that allocated space gets full, it works on a first-in, first-out basis, FIFO, meaning the oldest files get permanently deleted from the bin first to make space for new ones. Now, the actual storage location, it's a hidden system directory, and the name changes depending on the file system and the OS version. On older FAT systems, it's C recycled. On NTFS, like in Windows NT, 2000, XP, it's C Recycler. And on NTFS for Windows Vista and later versions, it's C Recycled out of bin. You usually have to change your folder options, uncheck high predicted operating system files to even see these. And here's a really crucial detail for forensics. On NTFS partitions, every user who logs into that computer gets their own private subdirectory inside Recycler, or recycle.bin. These subdirectories are named after the user's unique security identifier, their SID. That's a long alphanumeric string. Looks something like S1521, followed by a bunch of numbers, uniquely identifying that user account. When a file gets deleted to the recycle bin, it gets renamed. The syntax is usually like D, then the original drive letter, then a number, then the original extension. So maybe dc2.txt for the second text file deleted from C, and its original name, its original path, the date and time it was deleted, all the vital metadata is stored in a hidden index file, usually called INFO or sometimes INFO2 on older systems, located right there inside the recycle bin folder or the user's SID folder. And that INFO file, that is pure gold for forensic analysis. It's the key that links the rename file back to what it originally was, where it came from, and when it was deleted. Critical for reconstruction. D, damaged recycle bins, and how to repair recover.
Wow, that's incredibly detailed. Really shows the recycle bin is far from simple. But what happens if the recycle bin itself gets damaged? Or maybe it just looks empty when it shouldn't be, even though files were just deleted. That would definitely confuse a user, and more importantly for us, it could throw off an investigator looking for evidence. How do you handle that kind of situation?
Exactly. As a CHFI, you might run into damaged recycle bins quite often, and they can hide deleted data, sometimes maybe even intentionally. If that crucial index file, the INFO file we just talked about, gets damaged or deleted, the recycle bin will just look empty to the user. But often, the renamed deleted files are still physically sitting there in the recycled or recycler folder. They just don't have an index entry pointed to them anymore, so the OS interface can't see them. Repairing a deleted INFO file is usually pretty straightforward. You just delete the damaged INFO file itself and then restart Windows. The system will usually just recreate a fresh, empty one. Then the files that were still physically there might reappear in the bin. Another issue is if the recycled or recycler directory itself gets damaged. In that case, nothing appears in the bin and the folder structure is messed up. To fix that, you typically copy a file called desktop.ini. It's usually inside that directory or the user's SID subfolder, somewhere safe. Then delete everything inside the recycled or recycler directory. Just wipe its contents. Then copy that desktop.ini file back where it belongs. That usually resets the directory structure. The worst case is when the entire recycled or recycler folder is corrupted. When that happens, the recycle bin icon on the desktop might look full, but you can't open it, and the empty recycle bin option is grayed out. To fix this, you need the command prompt. First, use the attrib command to remove the system and hidden attributes, like attrib matches -hc, recycled, or attrib match as HA, recycler, adjusting the drive letter. Then, use the del command to delete the whole folder, del c recycle or del c recycler. Confirm the deletion, then just restart the computer. Windows should automatically recreate a new working recycle bin folder. Knowing these repair steps is vital, not just to recover evidence that might be hidden by damage, but also to understand why a user couldn't access their deleted files. That itself might be a clue about the system's health, or maybe even an attempt to hide something. OIFI's Linux Data Deletion and Recovery.
Okay, so Windows is obviously huge, but it's not the only player in the game. Lots of organizations, especially for servers and in certain tech circles, use Linux environments extensively. So how does deletion and recovery work over in the Linux world? Are there specific commands or concepts unique to Linux that a CHFI needs to know? Does it still follow that same logical delete idea? A Linux deletion methods.
You're absolutely right to bring up Linux. It's a really significant environment for investigations, often holding mission-critical data. Just like Windows, Linux graphical desktop environments, like Geonomy or XFS, they usually have their own trash can feature. It works similarly. When you delete a file using the graphical interface, it typically gets moved to a hidden .trash folder, usually within your home directory. So it's recoverable for a while, much like the Windows recycle bin. But down at the command line, the main command for deleting files is R. That stands for remove. And by default, R doesn't ask for confirmation. It's very direct and potentially dangerous for users if they're not careful. Once you delete a file with ARM, it's considered a permanent logical deletion straight away. The file's entry is gone from the file system, and its data blocks are immediately marked as available. So data recovery software is your only hope if you use ARM by mistake, assuming the data hasn't already been overwritten. Their ARM command also has several important switches. -F forces deletion, ignoring errors and suppressing prompts. It's very aggressive.
FIA makes it interactive, asking for confirmation for each file, which is safer for users. BIA recursively deletes directories and everything inside them. Super powerful, but potentially catastrophic if you point at the wrong place. And BIA gives verbose output, telling you what it's doing.
Okay, so WARM is basically a direct logical delete, skipping the graphical trash. Now, thinking back to data destruction, is there a Linux equivalent for securely wiping data? Something that ensures it's really unrecoverable, like that disk erasing software for Windows?
Absolutely, and this is a really crucial distinction for a CHFI working with Linux. The command is shred. Unlike Garmin, shred isn't about just logically deleting. It's specifically designed for secure deletion. What it does is overwrite the file's data multiple times with random patterns, making it practically unrecoverable. By default, it does this 25 times, which is, frankly, probably overkill for most modern hard drives, but it's very thorough. After overwriting, it then truncates the file, sets its size to 0, and removes it. It also has options like knight-in to specify a different number of overwrite passes, maybe shred knight-7 for 7 passes. Knight tells it to truncate and remove the file after overwriting. And knight-z is interesting. It adds one final overwrite pass using all zeros. This is clever because it helps hide the fact that shredding even occurred. It makes the space look like it was just freshly allocated and empty. So the stark difference between ARM, where data is often recoverable, and shred, which aims for unrecoverable destruction, is critical knowledge for a CHFI and Linux environment. You find evidence that shred was used in an investigation. It's not just about data loss. It often points directly to an intent to conceal data. That's a very significant finding, way beyond just accidental deletion. V, recovering deleted files. The art and science of bringing data back.
All right, so we've established that in many, many cases, even if data is logically deleted, if it's still physically hanging around on the disk, there's a good chance we can get it back. This is where the real detective work starts for a CHFI, right? The art, the science of pulling data back from the digital graveyard. But before we jump into the specific tools, there's a really, really important distinction we absolutely have to make clear first. A, data recovery versus computer forensics, a critical distinction.
Yes, you've highlighted probably the single most important conceptual difference in this entire chapter. It's fundamental for anyone getting into this field. While people often use the terms interchangeably in everyday conversation, data recovery and computer forensics are actually two very distinct disciplines. They're driven by completely different goals. Data recovery is basically just about salvaging lost or deleted data, often for an end user who accidentally deleted photos or whose hard drive crashed. The main goal is just to get the files back, get them working again, often by almost any means necessary. Computer forensics, on the other hand, is all about gathering and examining digital evidence to establish facts for court or other legal proceedings. The reason you're acquiring the data, the why, dictates your entire approach, your methodology, everything. The process has to meet strict legal standards.
And the implications of that why, they're absolutely massive, especially when you think about legal challenges, about whether the evidence you find will actually be allowed in court. It's not just about finding the data, it's about making absolutely sure that data and how you found it can stand up to intense scrutiny from lawyers, judges, juries.
Indeed. For forensics, the number one priority, above absolutely everything else, is preserving the integrity of the original evidence. This means any software, any hardware you use for acquiring or recovering data must, under no circumstances, modify the original data on the suspect drive. Not one byte. If you use standard, off-the-shelf data recovery tools that weren't specifically designed for forensic use, you run a huge risk. These tools might change file timestamps just by accessing them. They might create temporary files right there on the evidence drive. They might even accidentally damage other data while trying to recover something else. Any of those actions could completely compromise the investigation. It could make any evidence you retrieve inadmissible in court because the chain of custody is broken, the authenticity is questionable. It's a golden rule, it's non-negotiable. Never install recovery software directly onto the drive containing the data you want to recover. Always use bootable disks or forensic operating environments. Or connect the suspect drive to a separate clean machine, what we call a forensically sterile drive, one that's been wiped completely to avoid contamination. Ideally, you use a hardware write blocker. This is a physical device that sits between the suspect drive and your forensic workstation and physically prevents any write commands from reaching the evidence drive. It guarantees integrity. Without these precautions, even if you find the digital smoking gun, it might be completely worthless in a legal setting. A toolkit of Undelete software essential for CHFI.
Okay, those principles are crystal clear. Integrity first, always. Now that we understand that, let's dive into some of the specific tools that CHFI might actually use. We're talking about a whole toolbox here, right? A whole arsenal of software. Because data recovery isn't really a one-size-fits-all kind of problem. The right tool can make or break a recovery effort. But with so many options out there, what's maybe the most common mistake an inexperienced CHFI might make when picking a tool? And how do they avoid it?
Oh, that's a great question. And probably the most common mistake is assuming all Undelete tools are basically the same, or assuming they're all suitable for forensic work. They're definitely not. Many tools designed for consumers, for simple recovery. They write data back to the suspect drive, maybe logs or temporary files. And as we just said, that's a huge forensic no-no. So the single most critical feature you must look for in any tool, if you need that evidence to hold up in court, is its ability to work in a strictly read-only mode, or its ability to be used safely with a hardware write blocker. That's paramount. The other mistake is maybe not fully understanding the type of deletion or damage you're facing. Is it simple delete, a format, a partition loss? Because that dictates which tool is likely to be most effective. Okay, so let's touch on a few key examples from the source material, maybe grouping them by what they're best at. First, you have your bootable and low-level access tools. These are often your first responders, especially if the system won't even boot, or you need to grab data before the OS fully loads and potentially overwrites things. Activate Undelete, for example, that's known for handling complex setups like RAID arrays, really large hard disks, over 500 gigs, and removable media, too. Its sibling, Activate Uniraser, is particularly interesting because it's bootable. You can run it from a CD or USB stick. This lets you get deleted files before Windows even starts loading. That's huge for preserving evidence that might otherwise vanish during boot. It also includes a disk viewer for looking at raw sector data. Then you have user-friendly and wizard-based recovery tools. These often hold your hand through the process. Undelete from RTools is a good example. It uses wizards, and it can even try to reconstruct damaged media files, graphics, audio, video, and it often lets you preview files before you recover them, which is useful. Recover My Files is another popular one, known for being pretty easy to use and supporting a wide range of media types.
Okay, right here, this seems like a good spot to pause. Let's maybe walk through a specific example, like that free portable tool Restoration. Could you use that as a mini case study? Show us how it works and what it reveals.
Perfect idea. Okay, Restoration. It's free, it's portable, meaning you don't have to install it. Let's say you've just accidentally deleted a really important document. First step, you'd get the Restoration executable file. And put it somewhere safe, like on a USB drive or a different partition, never on the drive you're trying to recover from. You're running from there. Once it's open, you select the drive you deleted the file from in the drive's drop-down menu. Then you hit Search Deleted Files. The tool scans and lists the deleted files it finds. You can filter the list by typing part of the file name. Now, here's where the forensic insight comes in, thanks to two really important checkboxes. Include used clusters by other files, and include even if the file size is 0 on Undelete. If you check Include used clusters by other files and search again, you might see more files pop up. But the tool is basically telling you, hey, I found the record for this file, but its clusters are now being used by other files. This strongly suggests the original data has probably been overwritten, at least partially. It explains why a file might be unrecoverable or only come back corrupted. It gives you direct feedback on the data's state. Similarly, checking Include, even if the file size is 0, might show files where the directory entry exists, but the actual data content is completely gone. Restoring it would just give you an empty file. Once you find a file you want to try and recover, you select it, click Restore by copying, and choose a new separate location to save it to. Again, never restore back to the original drive you're recovering from, because that would overwrite other potentially recoverable data. So yeah, this little free tool, it teaches a huge lesson about the practical realities of data recovery and overwriting. Okay, continuing with other tool types, we also have specialized OS and file system tools, like Easy Undelete. That one's cool because it's cross-platform, handles Windows, FAT, and TFS, but also Linux and Mac OS X file systems. Plus, it has a hex preview for looking at raw data. Our Linux is specifically for Linux XT2 file systems and can also create disk images. Disk internals, uneraser, and NTFS recovery are, as the name suggests, specialized for FAT and NTFS. They can even tackle things like encrypted files or data from corrupted NTFS drives or partition tables. And finally, you've got your deep scan and fragment recovery tools. These are heavy hitters for tough cases. Zero Assumption Recovery, or ZAR, is great at doing deep physical disk scans, hunting for file fragments that might be scattered across the drive. It supports FAT, NTFS, RAID, even Linux XT2. Restorer 2000 has really broad support for different file systems and media types. It can reconstruct RAID arrays, includes a hex editor for manual data carving, and even has a network version for remote recovery scenarios.
Wow, that's an impressive lineup of tools. It really shows the sophistication involved. But, while these tools are clearly powerful lifesavers in a crisis, it brings us back to the simplest point, doesn't it? The easiest, most reliable way to get data back is just regular, disciplined backups. Prevention is always, always better than cure, especially with critical data. It's the ultimate undo button, really. See specialized recovery areas. Okay, so we've covered general file recovery, but sometimes the problem isn't just a deleted document. Some data types or certain kinds of storage media, they present unique challenges, right? They might need even more specialized tools, like what if it's a damaged photo collection, or a corrupted database, or even a physically scratched CD? What about those niche but still critical recovery areas?
You've absolutely nailed the complexity there. The digital world is incredibly diverse, and so are the ways data can be lost or damaged. So yeah, you need specialized tools for specialized problems. Consider these areas. First, recycle bin replacements. We talked about the limitations of the built-in Windows recycle bin, how it misses command line deletes, network deletes, etc. Well, there are tools like Diskkeeper Undelete, which is now just called Undelete, and FunDelete. These actually replace the native recycle bin. They offer more robust recovery, often catching files deleted in ways the standard bin misses. Some even offer versioning, letting you recover older versions of deleted files. For users, this is like an ounce of prevention, reducing the need for deep forensics for simple mistakes. But a CHFI might encounter these and need to understand how they work as they change where deleted data might reside. Second, optical media data recovery. Data on CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays. It can get damaged. Scratches, physical defects, problems during the burning process. Standard file recovery tools often choke on these physical issues. That's where tools like CD Roller come in. It can recover from various optical discs, even from DVD recorders or camcorders, and sometimes convert raw video to standard formats like MPEG. Very handy for multimedia evidence. ISOBuster is another big one. It supports CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, HD-DVD, and even Mac file systems like HFSS, HFS plus WIN. It can specifically scan for video file structures like IFO and VOB files on video DVDs. And Bad Copy Pro is worth mentioning because it explicitly states it doesn't write data back to the source media. That's a key forensic principle, ensuring you don't cause further damage while trying to recover. These tools are designed to read through errors and extract whatever data is still physically readable from damaged optical disks. Third, Microsoft Office repair and recovery. Sometimes the file itself isn't deleted, it's just corrupted. Maybe due to a system crash, a bad save, malware, or even deleting records inside a database improperly. When an Office file gets corrupted, you usually can't open it. That can be disastrous for a business. Suites like Office Fix, which includes tools like Access Fix, Excel Fix, Word Fix, and Outlook PFix, are designed to rescue data from these damaged files. They try to salvage text, formulas, formatting, embedded objects, whatever they can pull out of the corrupted structure. For instance, AccessX might recover deleted records from an Access database or work with password-protected files. Excel Fix tries to extract data into a new, clean spreadsheet. There are also standalone tools like Repair My Excel and Repair My Word that focus on specific applications.
That's a great scenario. Let's say a critical Excel spreadsheet, maybe the company's whole financial report, gets corrupted. Not deleted, just corrupted, won't open. What's the first thing you'd typically check for? And how would a tool like Excel Fix actually save the day, beyond just undeleting?
Yeah, perfect real-world problem. First thing I'd check. See if Office created any temporary or autosave files. Sometimes you get lucky and there's a recent backup copy hidden away. But if those are gone, or also corrupted, then a tool like Excel Fix becomes your lifesaver. It doesn't undelete the file, because the file still exists, it's just broken. Instead, it tries to parse the corrupted Excel file itself. It reads through the broken structure looking for recognizable pieces, valid data, cells, formulas, charts, formatting info. Then it attempts to extract all that valid stuff and rebuild it into a brand new, healthy Excel file. It essentially performs internal surgery on the damaged file, bypassing the corruption that prevents it from opening normally and salvaging whatever content is still structurally intact inside. It's recovery from within, not excavation from deletion. And fourth, we have deleted images and compressed files. Losing photos can be really upsetting for people, and forensically, images can be vital evidence. Images and videos can get deleted or corrupted on hard drives or directly on camera memory cards. So you have tools like image recovery, good for various memory card types. Canon RAW file recovery software, CRW repair, specifically for Canon's Dia CRW RAW files, often extracting the embedded JPEG. Image recall software, often has a thumbnail viewer, and PC Inspector Smart Recovery. Many of these, especially the ones from memory cards, emphasize read-only access. They won't write back to the card, preserving the original media, which is crucial forensically. Similarly, if a compressed archive file like a .zip or .rar gets damaged, you can lose access to all the files inside. Zip Repair is a tool specifically designed to fix these broken archives, even if they span multiple volumes, hopefully making the content accessible again. 6. Recovering deleted partitions. Rebuilding the digital blueprint.
Okay, moving from files to something much bigger, an entire partition just disappearing from your hard drive. That feels absolutely catastrophic, like a whole chunk of your digital life just vanished. Most users would probably assume that data's gone forever. But is that really the case? Or is there a way to bring that big piece of digital real estate back from the brink?
Yeah, it definitely feels catastrophic, but not necessarily permanent. When a partition is deleted, what usually happens is its entry is removed from the partition table, that master map we talked about in the MBR. It's kind of like ripping the table of contents out of a huge, complex book. The pages, the actual data, they're mostly still there. They're just much harder to find and access because the main organizational blueprint is gone. The space that partition used to occupy just becomes unallocated space as far as the operating system is concerned. It's like a blank canvas waiting for something new to be written there. Partition recovery tools are specifically designed to scan this unallocated space. They look for clues, remnants of the old partition structure, things like backup boot sectors, file system headers. Then they try to reconstruct that missing entry in the partition table, essentially rebuilding the digital blueprint so the OS can see and access the data again. Deleting partitions in Windows, computer management, and command line.
So how does an investigator look at partition deletion? How might it happen accidentally? Or could it be done intentionally to hide data? What are the common ways it's done in Windows, and are there signs to look for?
Understanding how partitions get deleted is definitely key for a CHFI. It helps with recovery strategy, and it can also give clues about intent. In Windows, most common graphical way is using the computer management console, specifically the disk management tool. You can just right-click on a partition there and select Delete Partition. Pretty straightforward for a user cleaning up or reconfiguring drives. But there are built-in protections. You usually can't delete the system partition where Windows boots from, or the boot partition where the OS files live. And you can't delete an extended partition if it still contains logical drives inside it. You have to delete the logical drives first. Then there's the command line. Older systems, like MS-DOS and Windows 9X, used a tool called FDIS. It was menu-driven. You'd launch it, go through menus like Delete Partition or Logical DOS Drive, choose the type, and it would warn you before deleting. Newer Windows versions like 2000, XP, Vista, and later use Diskpart. This one is purely command-driven, no menus. You type Diskpart to start it, Then use commands like list disk, select disk and, list partition, select partition and finally delete partition. Both the graphical method and the command line tools have those same basic limitations about not deleting active system volumes or extended partitions with logical drives still inside. Knowing these methods and their limitations helps the CHFI understand what a user might have done and the potential state of the drive. Using the command line, for instance, often suggests a more deliberate action than just an accidental click in disk management. Be deleted partition recovery tools, forensic necessities.
Right. So, given that a whole partition can vanish for lots of reasons, power outage, virus attack, just an accidental click, or maybe someone deliberately trying to hide something, what tools do we have to try and bring that digital blueprint back? This sounds like it needs some serious software power.
This is exactly where specialized partition recovery tools become forensic necessities. They really are expert tools. They automate the process of scanning the disk, looking for those telltale signs of old partitions, boot sectors, file system structures, and then they try to rebuild the partition table entry. They often rely on the fact that file systems like FAT32 and NTFS usually keep backup copies of their boot sectors, which provides a crucial starting point for recovery. Partitions can get damaged in so many ways. Power failures during writes, viruses messing with the root directory or MBR, accidental formatting, deletion via FDisk or diskpart. Problems can also come from a lost or corrupted partition table itself, or a damaged MFT, root directory, or boot record. Any of these can make Windows unable to even see the hard disk. In these situations, these tools are indispensable. Let's highlight a few key ones and why they're valuable. First, for all-rounders with deep scan capabilities. Active Partition Recovery is a strong contender. It handles various FAT and NTFS partitions, can create drive images, and backs up critical structures like the MBR, partition table, and boot sectors. Its super scan feature is really powerful. It can sometimes find partitions that were deleted a long time ago, even if new partitions were created and formatted over them. And having both DOS and Windows versions means you can run it even if the system won't boot into Windows. Plus, it lets you preview files and folders before recovering, which is great for verification. Next, for user-friendly and wizard-based recovery. Disk Internals Partition Recovery is good for deleted or damaged partitions, supporting F and TFS. A key feature is its ability to recover files that were deleted before the partition itself was lost. That's powerful. It uses wizards to guide you, which makes complex recovery more accessible, and it also handles MBR recovery and unformatting. Handy Recovery is another one in this category. Recovers deleted, damaged, formatted partitions. It can search by file name, recover whole folders, and it gives a probability of recovery estimate for files useful for an investigator assessing evidence quality. Also supports compressed encrypted NTFS. For remote recovery capabilities, Get Data Back is interesting. It comes in separate NTFS and FAT versions, but its standout feature is recovering data remotely over a network or even a serial cable. This can be invaluable if you can't easily remove the drive. Maybe it's in a locked server rack or in a system that needs to stay running. It also has settings to optimize based on how the damage likely occurred. Example, formatting, OS reinstall. Finally, for open source and advanced repair, Test Disk. This is a free, open source, cross-platform tool, and it's incredibly versatile. It can fix partition tables, recover boot sectors from backups, rebuild various file system structures, find backup superblocks for Linux 2XD3 systems, even fix the MFT using its mirror copy. It's a favorite among advanced users and forensic pros for its power and flexibility, especially with tricky or badly damaged systems. These tools together form the CHFI's essential kit for rebuilding that digital blueprint when partitions go missing. Shows that even a seemingly total loss isn't always the end of the story. 7. Data acquisition and duplication. The forensic imperative.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time on recovering data that was deleted or lost, but way before you can even start that kind of intricate detective work, the investigator first has to get a copy of the original data, acquire it, duplicate it, and do it without changing anything. This sounds like an incredibly high-stakes operation, like walking a tightrope. One tiny misstep could compromise the whole investigation. What's the absolute #1 rule here?
It absolutely is the foundational step, yes. And the stakes could not be higher. The absolute first rule, the prime directive you could call it, is do no harm to the original evidence, period. Electronic evidence is just inherently fragile. It's so easy to modify it, damage it, even destroy it accidentally. Just booting up a suspect computer, that simple act can change things. It can update file access times. It might erase temporary files stored in memory. It could write new log files or swap file data to the drive during the boot process itself. And then there's a very real risk of booby traps. Malicious scripts maybe, or programs set up to wipe the drive or critical files if certain things happen during boot or if the wrong password gets entered. So the absolute first, non-negotiable step in any digital investigation: create an exact, forensically sound duplicate of the suspect media. This is totally paramount for preserving the integrity of that original evidence and maintaining that crucial chain of custody. A. The Bitstream image, the cornerstone of forensic acquisition. The main goal here is to create what we call a Bitstream copy. You'll also hear called a disk image or a forensic image. This is not just copying files like you do in Windows Explorer. No. This means every single physical sector on the disk, byte for byte, is copied over. It creates an exact mirror image physically and logically of the original drive. This comprehensive image includes everything. Visible files, yes, but also hidden files, temporary files, even corrupted files, fragments of files, the unused slack space within allocated clusters, and critically all those erased files that haven't been overwritten yet. If you don't create a proper Bitstream image, you risk missing potential evidence that's hiding in those often overlooked areas, and that missed piece could be the key to the whole case. This whole approach is fundamentally different from standard backup software or disk cloning tools. Those usually only copy the visible files and ignore deleted data or slack space. They're just not suitable for forensic work.
Right, so it's really about capturing the entire digital landscape. Every nook and cranny, every little erased note in the margin, not just the main text the OS normally shows you. It's like taking a perfect, super high-resolution photograph of the entire system at one exact moment in time.
Exactly. And for this to be forensically sound, accepted in court, the original data must not be modified in any way while you're making that copy. Zero changes. This usually means connecting the suspect drive to a special forensic workstation that has write protection enabled, or using specialized bootable forensic software that runs entirely from a CD or a USB drive. That software then writes the image file out to a separate forensically sterile drive. And sterile means the destination drive has been completely wiped clean beforehand, so there's no risk of mixing old data with the new evidence image. Hardware-based write blocking is almost always preferred. It's a physical device that guarantees no write commands can reach the suspect drive. It's just more reliable and easier to defend in court than software write blocking. This level of care ensures the evidence remains pristine.
Okay, so once you've created that pristine image, that perfect snapshot, how does the investigator actually use it? Do they just start working directly on this main copy?
Good question. No, you never work directly on that primary forensic image if you can help it. Once the Bitstream image is created and verified, usually using cryptographic hashes like MD5 or SHA-1 to prove it's an exact copy, the forensic software will then mount that image file as a read-only volume. This read-only part is critical. It lets the investigator browse everything inside the image partitions, raw sectors, directories, files, metadata, without any risk whatsoever of altering the image itself. No changing timestamps, no accidental deletions. This preserves that original evidence copy. If something goes wrong during analysis, if the working copy gets corrupted somehow, you always have the pristine, verified master image to go back to. It maintains integrity in the chain of custody. Typically, an investigator will make a working copy of the master image and perform all the analysis on that working copy, keeping the master image safely stored and untouched. B. Software tools for forensic data acquisition.
That makes perfect sense, a very rigorous process. So given how absolutely critical creating that Bitstream image is, what are some of the main software tools the CHFI would typically rely on for this? I imagine the tool's reputation, its track record in court, those must be huge factors, right? You need something that's defensible.
Well, absolutely. When you choose forensic tools, reliability, a robust feature set, and whether the tool has been accepted in court before, those are paramount considerations. You need tools that can stand up to scrutiny if challenged. Let's start with one that's widely considered an industry standard, FTK Imager. It's part of the forensic toolkit from Access Data. It's a really powerful integrated tool. It lets you preview data on a drive before imaging, which can be useful. And it makes forensic images of all sorts of media hard drives, floppies, CDs, DVDs. It's also very versatile with formats. It can read and write multiple image types like the NCASE format, EO1, raw DEED images, smart images, its own FTK format, AD1, even uncompressed ghost images. Its interface is pretty good too. You get an evidence tree view to navigate folders, file lists, and you can preview data in hex or text, see file properties, DOS attributes. The strategic value of FTK Imager supporting all those formats, it's huge. It means a CHFI isn't locked into just one vendor's system. You can work with evidence that was maybe acquired using a different tool. That interoperability is crucial in complex cases involving multiple teams or older evidence. And that clear evidence tree, it makes presenting your findings in court much easier because it's logical and visual, helps build credibility. Another one, more historical but important, is SafeBack by NTI. This was an early, widely accepted DOS-based tool, been used by law enforcement like the FBI, IRS since the early 90s. It creates sector-by-sector duplicates, verifies the copy using CRC checks, and keeps audit trails. And crucially, it deliberately avoids using any compression or data translation, aiming for the strictest possible fidelity to the original to avoid legal arguments about alteration. Then there's Mount Image Pro from GetData Software. This isn't an acquisition tool itself, but it's vital for analysis afterwards. It lets you mount and view various forensic image formats in case, DD, Smart, ISO without needing the original software that created the image, or any special hardware keys, dongles. This massively improves interoperability and can save a lot of money on software licenses. It can even, reportedly, open password-protected encased images without the password in some cases. That's a potential lifesaver when dealing with older or encrypted evidence where the password is lost. These tools form the software backbone for sound acquisition and analysis. CE hardware tools for forensic data acquisition. Portable labs.
Okay, software is clearly essential, but you also mentioned specialized hardware designed just for forensic acquisition. What are the advantages of using these dedicated devices? How do they help an investigator, especially maybe when they're out in the field, at a crime scene? Sounds like they're literally bringing a portable lab with them.
You've got it exactly right. Hardware solutions offer some unique and really significant advantages, especially for field work or for high-speed imaging back in the lab. Many of these devices really are like portable forensic labs in a box. Their benefits. Well, they often have built-in hardware write blocking. It's usually considered the gold standard, the most reliable way to prevent accidental writes to the evidence drive. It's a physical barrier, not software dependent. They can also acquire data incredibly fast, much faster than software solutions often can, especially over slower interfaces. This drastically cuts down the time needed on-site or in the lab, which can be critical if you're dealing with volatile data or just have limited time. Many are also designed to be forensically sterile, meaning their internal working drives can be securely wiped clean after every case, ensuring absolutely no data from one case contaminates the next. Let's look at a couple of examples to make it concrete. The ImageMaster Solo 3 Forensic from Intelligent Computer Solutions. This is a portable handheld unit. It can pull data from suspect drives, IDE, SATA, SCSI, at speeds over 4 gigabytes per minute.
And it can image from one or even two source drives simultaneously to destination drives. That's speed and portability. Huge advantage for rapid response. For working right in the field, the Roadmaster 3 is purpose-built. It connects directly to various drive types, IDE, SATA, SAS, SCSI. It can acquire from multiple drives onto a target drive. But the really critical feature, it has a built-in 15-inch color display right in its rugged case. This lets the investigator do immediate preliminary analysis of the acquired image right there at the crime scene. That on-the-spot capability is a game changer. You can verify the image was captured successfully, maybe quickly search for critical keywords, or even confirm if a specific suspect file exists before you pack up and leave the scene. That can guide your next steps immediately. And one more, the Disk Jockey IT by Discology. This one's notable for being one of the smallest portable write blocking and disk copying devices around. It connects via FireWire or USB and acts as a write blocker when connecting a suspect drive to your forensic workstation. So yeah, these hardware tools really complement the software. They offer robust, super efficient, and forensically sound ways to acquire data in all sorts of situations, ensuring that evidence integrity starts right at the source. Eighth, backing up and duplicating data beyond forensics.
Right. We've really drilled down on the forensic need for those perfect Bitstream copies where every single byte matters for court. But stepping back from that very specific legal context, there are lots of other more common and equally important reasons why people need to duplicate data. This is where general backups and system duplication come into play for more everyday scenarios.
Well, absolutely. Data duplication and making backups are essential for tons of reasons beyond strict forensics investigation. For instance, disaster recovery, that's a huge one. Protecting your data against loss from viruses, ransomware, other malware, catastrophic hardware failures like a hard drive dying, or even network intrusions. Having a recent, reliable backup means you can restore your systems and data quickly if disaster strikes, minimizing downtime and the impact on business or personal life. Another big use case is mass deployment of computer systems. Think of a large company or a school. IT departments often create a golden image. That's a perfect setup of the operating system, all the standard applications, drivers, configurations. They can then replicate or image this golden setup onto hundreds or thousands of computers. It saves an enormous amount of time compared to installing and configuring each machine one by one. And even during an investigation, say a computer needs to be seized as evidence. Having a standard image ready allows the organization to quickly deploy a clean replacement computer, minimizing the disruption to their operations. These scenarios usually involve different kinds of tools than forensic imagers. Tools that prioritize speed, efficiency, maybe compression, over that meticulous byte-for-byte fidelity needed for court. A. Tools for general backup and duplication. So for these general backup and duplication tasks, you typically find tools like R-Drive Image from R-Tools Technology. This one creates byte-by-byte copies of drives, partitions, or logical disks specifically for backup and restoration purposes. It usually compresses these images to save space and stores them on another hard drive, network storage, or maybe CDS DVDs. While it says byte by byte, its main goal is efficient system restore, not necessarily capturing every scrap of deleted data for forensics. Save and Sync by Peer Software. This is designed to synchronize data between different directories. Really useful for keeping files consistent between, say, your laptop and a network server, or maybe between two different servers for redundancy. You can set it up for manual syncs or have it run automatically. Its strength is keeping active working copies up to date. And Quick Copy from Shaftstall Corporation. This is more specialized. It's a tape duplication system, designed specifically for making copies of backup tapes. You know, when critical server data is backed up to magnetic tape, companies often need duplicate tapes for offsite storage or disaster recovery plans. Quick Copy makes tape-to-tape copies, usually verifying byte by byte. It can also copy a tape to an image file on a hard disk. While its main purpose is DR, those duplicate tapes could potentially become evidence in an investigation, providing a historical snapshot of data. So yeah, these tools are powerful for data management and protection, but a CHFI would always have to carefully evaluate if their output meets strict forensic integrity standards before relying on them as primary evidence in court. 9 means acquiring data in Linux Unix with native commands.
Okay, let's circle back one last time to Linux and Unix environments. We've talked about specialized forensic tools, both software and hardware, but these operating systems, they're famous for having powerful built-in commands. Commands that can actually be incredibly useful for data acquisition and transfer, maybe even letting you bypass third-party tools sometimes. It's like having forensic capabilities baked right in if you know the right commands. A, the DD command, disk duplicator and converter.
Yeah, the DB command. It's truly a fundamental and incredibly powerful tool in the UNIX and Linux world. And you can get versions for Windows too. DD actually stands for convert and copy. And it's powerful because it's designed to copy data byte for byte, creating exact mirror images of entire disks or partitions you tell in an input file using F and an output file using of. So something like DD if divda of path to image would copy the entire hard disk represented by divda into an image file called image located at path to image. The real beauty of DD is that it works at a raw block level. It doesn't really care about file systems, folders, or files. It just copies raw blocks of data. It has lots of options too.
Yeah.
BS lets you set the block size, which can speed things up, like BS4M for 4 megabyte blocks. Skip and seek let you jump past blocks in the input or output. Count tells it how many blocks to copy. And the convert option is really important. It allows various conversions. No error tells DD to keep going, even if it hits read errors on the source drive. That's vital if you're imaging a damaged disk. Otherwise, the whole process might just stop at the first bad sector.
No trunk prevents it from cutting the output file short. You can even use it to grab just the master boot record. You do something like dfdevsda of Ember Backup BS512 count 1. That tells it to copy only one block, count 1 of 512 bytes, BS551212, which is exactly the size and location of the MPR on most disks.
So it's really raw, really powerful. It just bypasses the whole file system layer and works directly with the blocks on the disk. What about those bad blocks on a damaged drive? How does Bruce handle that in a way that's forensically acceptable?
Precisely. That raw block-level operation makes it invaluable for low-level data work, especially with damaged file systems or when you need that exact forensically sound image of the raw disk. For damaged drives with bad blocks, that cut a mirror option is absolutely your best friend. Without it, like I said, DFED would just stop at the first read error and your image would be incomplete. With no error, it will try to read the bad block, fail, but then keep going with the next block. Usually insert zeros or some kind of placeholder data in the output image where the bad block was on the source. A CHFI might use a command like dd if difftb and forensisimage.dd, BS5512 and no error sync. The sync option here is also important. It makes sure that if dd encounters a read error and no error keeps it going, the corresponding block in the output file is padded, usually with zeros, to the specified block size, BS512 in this case. This ensures that even with read errors, the output image maintains the correct byte-for-byte alignment relative to the source drive. It prevents the image from getting skewed or misaligned, which could corrupt the entire image structure. It's like making a perfect photocopy. You want to capture everything, even the damaged bits, in the right place.
You know.
The netcat. the network Swiss Army knife.
Okay, and what about getting data across a network in a forensic situation? Sometimes you just can't physically pull a drive out of a server rack, or maybe it's a remote machine, or you need to image a live system with the least possible impact.
Yeah, that's where Netcat often comes into play. It's this incredibly versatile little command line tool, often called the network Swiss Army knife. It's available on pretty much everything: Linux, UNIX, Windows, Mac. Its basic job is reading and writing data across network connections, using either TCP or UDP protocols. Now, it sometimes gets a reputation as a hacking tool because it's so flexible for setting up connections and moving data around. But it's just as useful, maybe even more so, for network admins and forensic experts doing legitimate work. For example, you could use DED to image a drive, pipe the output through gzip to compress it on the fly, and then pipe that compressed stream through Netcat to send it securely across the network to your forensic workstation on the other end. It works in two modes: server mode, where it listens on a port you specify, like NEC-LP1234, and client mode, where it connects to that server's IP address and port, NC server at 1234. This lets you create a direct raw data pipeline over the network.
So basically, you can set up this secure direct channel to move raw data or a compressed image of raw data from one machine to another across the network without needing things like file sharing setup. That sounds incredibly powerful. But you mentioned that hacking tool reputation. If you use Netcat in an investigation, how do you handle that perception? How do you defend using a tool that some might see as questionable in a legal setting?
That's a really smart, nuanced question, and it's vital. The absolute key is meticulous documentation and clear justification. While Netcat can be used by malicious actors, its fundamental function is just network communication. It's a tool. As a CHFI using it forensically, you would document exactly why you chose Netcat. Maybe physical access was impossible. Maybe you needed a raw direct transfer. Maybe minimizing impact on a live running system was the priority. You'd log the precise commands used on both the source and destination machines. You'd document the steps taken to verify the integrity of the transferred data, like calculating cryptographic hashes, MD5, SHA-1, of the data before sending it and after receiving it, proving nothing was altered in transit. You'd document the entire chain of custody for the data transfer. In court, you'd emphasize that Netcat is a standard low-level networking utility. You'd explain its function clearly. It's like, a hammer could be used to build a house or it can be used as a weapon. The tool itself isn't inherently bad. It's the intent and the application that define its context. By providing rigorous methodology, thorough documentation, and clear expert testimony, you can absolutely overcome that negative perception. It's a great example of leveraging powerful native OS capabilities for forensic work, but always with caution and detailed record keeping. Key learning points and recap. Okay, so we're trying to tie all this together, connected to the bigger picture. What really stands out as the most critical thing from today's deep dive? For me, it's that stark fundamental difference between just logically deleting something versus physically destroying data. Data is very rare, truly gone, just because someone hit delete or ran disk cleanup. Not until it's been intentionally overwritten or physically obliterated. Understanding that. That's the bedrock of digital forensics.
Absolutely. And knowing that difference, it drives the entire field, doesn't it? We learned that creating a Bitstream image, that exact byte-for-byte copy, is completely non-negotiable if you want to preserve evidence integrity for an investigation. It captures everything, not just the obvious files, but the hidden stuff, the fragments, the slack space, the deleted but not overwritten files. It's like perfectly preserving a crime scene digitally.
And this brings up that crucial question again, the why. Why are you acquiring the data? Is it just simple recovery for a user who made a mistake? Or is it for court admissible evidence? Because that why dictates everything: the tools you use, the methods you follow. You absolutely have to prioritize using forensic-grade software and hardware, especially tools with verified write blocking. That's how you maintain the chain of custody and avoid any possibility of compromising the original evidence. The consequences of messing that up can literally destroy an entire case.
And we've certainly seen an incredible range of tools today. Everything from basic command line utilities like DEL and RM, all the way up to sophisticated software for recovering specific file types or entire partitions, and even powerful hardware systems that are like portable forensic labs. I guess the big takeaway is that there are almost always options for getting data back or securing it properly, but choosing the right option. That depends entirely on the specific situation, the OS involved, and crucially, the level of forensic integrity required. It's a field that really demands both deep technical skill and painstaking attention to detail. Outro. Wow. What an incredible journey into the hidden layers of our digital data. From really understanding what happens when you click delete to deploying these sophisticated tools to acquire and recover stuff that seemed totally lost, this deep dive has really highlighted the meticulous and often high-stakes world of computer hacking forensic investigation.
Indeed it has. Being able to acquire and recover data skillfully, efficiently, and most importantly, forensically soundly. It's not just a technical skill. It's really the foundation for uncovering the truth in the digital realm. It takes patience, it takes precision, and it takes an absolutely unwavering commitment to data integrity and following proper procedures.
So, what does all this mean for you, listening in? As you continue exploring digital forensics, just remember that digital footprint, it's persistent, way more persistent than most people ever realize. Your role as a potential CHFI is to understand all those nuances, master the techniques to correctly interpret that footprint, and always, always prioritize the integrity of the evidence. In a world overflowing with data that's constantly being created, deleted, maybe recovered, what does truly gone really mean anymore? That's definitely a question worth thinking about.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging beneath the surface.